Tokyo. This is Dennis Chang, and can you believe it? I managed to make a video every single week for a whole year. I don't know if I can do this next year. It's insane. It takes so much time and preparation to do these, and sometimes I just get brain fatigue from actually not from the filming process. The filming is okay. I was in Australia last month, and the organizer told me, Cameron told me, the workshops don't have to be that long, but once I get started, you have to stop me. I can go on forever. And what just drives me insane is the whole process behind making these videos. So, you know what? It'll be really cool if one day I could afford a team like I have for DC Music School. So speaking of which, DC Music School is having its end of year sale. I'll let you in on a little secret. We're gonna keep the sale going for maybe a week, in January. So no hurry. It's a massive sale. I don't know, like 30-40% discount on everything. And so if you like what you see in this video, you can consider supporting me. And today I want to talk about harmony, as I always talk about, because harmony is one of the most misunderstood things among jazz musicians, sometimes even among trained professional jazz musicians. I think it was last week I talked about harmony, and I said not in the sense of like the academic way, here's a 2-5-1, here's a 1-6, but about the global effect of harmony, understanding harmony in such a way that you understand the idiom. So if you're going to play in a particular way, you're going to dress up the chord in a particular. So if you're playing like early jazz, generally you do not play C major 7. It's not really in the style unless there's a specific arrangement that calls for it. Generally speaking, it's C major or C6. If you're going to be playing bossa nova, not that I'm a bossa nova expert, but from what I understand, it's a lot of these chords. Major 9, major 7, right? If you're playing bebop, whatever, and understanding where to use certain chord substitutions, or not even chord substitutions, but certain harmonizations to understand the style, the idiom. And this is something that is not really taught in academic circles. This is something you have to discover on your own. You should watch a lot of my previous videos where I talk about this. I have a lot of really good videos. And another thing, the intro segment that you saw was improvised. It's me playing all of me. And well, there were some things that didn't come out the way I originally intended because due to the nature of improvisation, but I thought it was pretty cool, so I kept it. You'll have all of this transcribed, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to use all of me to talk about harmony the way I described it earlier. And one thing, sorry to promote my book, but if you go on Amazon, you type my name, Dennis Chang, and you look for jazz guitar fretboard visualization, you'll find a book that goes into the process I use to come up with chord melodies. And I think it's a very important skill to acquire if you're pretty serious about jazz guitar. It's something that all the best jazz guitar players use, sometimes subconsciously, but it's a skill they have that they've developed. And it's kind of the key to understanding harmony as far as the guitar is concerned. The gist of it is that when you play a note on the guitar, you need to visualize in your head the context. So if you play a note C, but let's say we are in the key of D flat, seeing the note C is not enough. You have to see this, or any iteration of D flat. It can be something like this. Holy moly. Oh, let's see. No, I can't do it. Forget it. Oh. Or, sorry, I'm just having fun here. Okay, no. With the chin. So it's kind of like you're in the Matrix and you can see everything. You see how everything is connected. So this is the process that I use to be able to do this. And you can also check out a course on Soundslice where I talk about harmony, where I teach harmony from a historical perspective. So when it comes to harmony, one thing you have to understand is that it's flexible, and you have to make certain artistic choices depending on many factors, depending on the style that you're going for, if you're even going for a style. In this case, I didn't go for any particular style. I just did what I did with freedom. So that was very liberating. And because in the backing track that you heard, there's no piano or any accompaniment instrument playing chords, just bass, I also felt a lot of freedom to impose different things as well, which we're going to talk about. So the thing about harmony, if you follow my channel, I talk a lot about harmonic direction. I'm not going to explain it here again because I've talked about it enough times. Just check out my previous videos. I've talked about it many times. Anyway, but to go a little bit further, it is not about the individual chords, but about the direction where the tension and the resolution points are. And if you can understand this, then you can understand how phrasing works as well. Where to put tension, where to release, and there is an element of subjectivity to this. And actually, there's a guy, I think he's Austrian, Heinrich Schenker. He's a theorist who came up with this philosophy, this idea that music, until a certain point in history, classical music, until about the mid-1800s, music can be philosophically reduced to 1 and to 5. In other words, 1 is safety, resolution, 5 is tension. And then if you take like a complicated Beethoven symphony or a Vivaldi concerto or a Bach something, harpsichord piece, everything can be reduced to 1, 5, 1. And this is actually the concept of harmonic direction that I talk about. So within an entire piece, you have, well, the big one, which is the home key, but then you have little ones, like when it changes keys or it goes to certain places, and then you have 5s as well. So 5 is the opposite of 1. It's the tension chord that leads you to the resolution point. So let's look at this already for all of me. All right, it's in the key of C. 1, resolution. Then it goes to a 5 chord. Now we have a moment of tension. E7. Is it going to resolve to A minor? If it does, that's here we have a tiny 5 and a tiny 1. Even though we're in the key of C, right? Ooh, the whammy bar made the guitar go out of tune. Amazing. By the way, I bought this Strat for myself for Christmas. So what it does though, it goes E7 to A7. A 5 and another 5. What's gonna happen after? Here it resolves D minor. So resolution, let's say save space. Look at me, I'm using very progressive vocabulary. So save space, Texas, Louisiana, San Francisco. Okay, so you resolve here. And then another moment of tension. So another tiny 5, resolution. This resolution leads to another point of tension. Another point of tension, resolution. So if you look at the melody to the song, it is phrased accordingly. So and this is very interesting. On the D minor, it goes G. So melodically, there's tension here. Oh, beautifully out of tune. But what I did in my improvisation, instead of treating this melody note as a D minor, which I could, I treated it as a 5 chord. So I extended the 5 chord over to the D minor. It overlaps. This is something a lot of jazz improvisers use to create tension. So when you're improvising, if you're a beginner, maybe you don't know this, but the way you start your phrases or you end your phrases, they don't have to align perfectly with the chord on beat 1. Sometimes you can delay the resolution. Sometimes you can play the chord earlier as well. So for example, here's a phrase. Let me just improvise something. Let's say you're going from E7 to A minor. Does it work? Yeah, try this. I want you to take your guitar, play 2 bars of E7 and 2 bars of A minor. But I'm going to resolve the A minor here. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, while you play the original chord progression. Let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3, 4. A minor. Study my book. What else can you come up with? Very cool, huh? Check out my book. So in the beginning, what I did was just something very simple. I just used triads because this is kind of an old song. You can do what you want, of course, but I didn't put any fancy chords. I could have, but I could too. But I just did triads. Sorry. But if I wanted fancy chords, you know. That's cool. You have this. I can do that. You have this. Then I just use diminished, nothing complicated. I don't know what I did here. And then, I think I did this kind of Wes Montgomery thing. So this is a modern idea. I learned it from Wes Montgomery. I don't know if he invented, probably didn't. I know jazz pianists do it a lot as well, so maybe Wes got it from a pianist somewhere. But anyway, over an A7 chord, I decided to introduce the 2 chord of the A7 to dress it up that way. This is it. This is the 2 chord. Here's a fancy version of a 2 chord. If you don't understand this theory, don't worry, it's not important. Then I did this. I think I did this. This to be a little bit modern. And I did the whole song this way. But again, you have the choice of harmonic interpretation. You could have done like this part over A7. I went to A7 again over the D minor, but you can just go to the D minor as well. And knowing this kind of stuff will give you options as an improviser to craft different kinds of lines. And then of course it does A7 again, E7, sorry. Da, da, da. What did I do here? Did I do this? I think I did E7. So I did the same concept where it's supposed to be A minor. I decided to create tension and then resolution. Then D7, nothing complicated. Then to G7. Now, here it's a question of idiom. How do you want to treat the G? If you want, you can treat it as a D minor because the melody allows it. But I treat it as a G7. That's the original chord progression. But you can do. And of course, if you know more about harmony, if you studied my book, you can treat the G7 as a fancy G7 because the melody allows it. This is the melody. You can do this. So let me see. Then you can improvise accordingly. Second half, I remember going to a different spot just for fun, just to show you that you can do things different in different spots. It can be this E7, it can be this E7, it can be this E7, it can be this E7. It can be this Wes Montgomery E7. What did I do for A7? I don't remember. Oh, I remember what I did. I made a quote-unquote mistake. It's not what I intended to do, but I was improvising. I just did something like that. I just did a... Okay, so in terms of harmonic direction, it's the same thing. Then towards the end, okay, now we have a new spot. It's kind of, it's not a 5 chord, of course, but it's a kind of lower degree of tension. So we're still going to call it 5. when I use the term 5 here, I'm not talking about necessarily a 5-1 relationship, but tension. So let's actually use the word tension. A slight moment of tension. We're on F. Where does it want to go? Well, basically it wants to get to C, but there's a long path to take. So it goes, you took the part that once was my house, so why not take all of me? And all that from just to get from F to here. But then, so it's basically one. Oh, sorry, my microphone. You know what? I need to know this. This thing's interfering. Man, it's hard to record. I'm telling you, it just drives me nuts. Hopefully, it's not going to interfere. Okay. So basically, you can think of it as a long moment of tension, 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 resolution. That's the end of the song. But within this long phrase of tension, you have micro tensions, microaggressions. How's that, you know? So, tension, tension, it's all voice leading. Little resolution. But the song's not over. This goes then to A7. And this is again a big 5. Micro resolution. But then the big final resolution. Attention to resolution. So what did I do in my improvisation? I played the melody with more or less the original chord. F minor. A7. I think I played this chord just to be fancy. And then, so it's pretty interesting. See, here it's A9, then A7 flat 9. Assuming that's what I did, I don't remember. Then D minor, D minor 7, I did it here. Then G7, because you can dress it up however, you can dress it up like this. So many ways, as long as it fits the melody. So you can learn a lot about harmony this way. And then instead of playing C, I played D flat. Because a D flat with a note C on top is just a D flat major 7. It's a trick that jazz musicians sometimes do in their improvisation, or sometimes even their accompaniment, just to create a little moment of extra tension. This is supposed to be where the resolution is, but you can force tension there, and then it resolves the top of the floor. So that's what I mean about understanding harmony. Understanding where you can create tension, where you can create resolution, where you can force resolution, where you can force tension, etc. Interesting to know that the original melody, which almost no one ever plays, is supposed to be so why? It's supposed to be this F minor. So if you want to do it like that, you could do. And understanding this concept is what will allow you to create all sorts of extra substitutions if ever you get into like modern jazz and you want to learn how to make things even more spicy. For instance, this whole part. You can do you. Well, let's not even go there first. Let's keep it simple. You can harmonize it in other ways because the melody allows it. So instead of F, F minor, you can do F, F sharp diminished. So you. So it can go like this. And instead of D minor, you can make it D7. Because the melody allows it. So that's how jazz musicians in the past operated. They see what the melody allows and then they harmonize accordingly. Not just jazz musicians, but arrangers and people who are deciding which chords to use for songs. So it's if you do it this way, it's a very organic process. You'll see what works and what doesn't work. Of course, the more complicated you make it, the harder it might be to improvise, but that could be something that people do. That's how people come up with, you know, the Coltrane changes and everything. But now, okay, so let's start with this again. So F, F sharp diminished. And then if you know a little bit about like harmony theory, you know that F sharp diminished is actually B7. So F major, B7. Oh, interesting. That allows you to create a new phrase. A new line of improvisation. Then to C, but wait, C major is kind of the same as E minor. So here's a fancy, this is like a B7 altered. So now you have a cycle, and you can improvise this way. So now let's ignore the melody. We're done with it. Hopefully I got my point across. But as an improviser, you can start to come up with twists and turns, because now that we've eliminated the melody, and there's only a bass player accompanying us, so we have way more freedom. I can really take things outside. So instead of F to B7, I can think, hey, F sharp diminished, F sharp diminished to B7. Because look, F sharp diminished, half diminished, sorry, F major 7. So that was the original chord. It actually fits the melody, actually, in a modern way. So you have this. You can also night and day. That's the night and day chord progression. Well, for those of you who are Django nerds, Djangology. So over this whole part that goes, you took the part, even if the rhythm section is playing the original chord progression, you can be try it. And that's how modern jazz guitarists, well, not guitarists, just jazz musicians, come up with all these things that kind of sound outside, dissonant, just to create this crunch. And this is a matter of preference, you know. You do you according to how you feel in the moment. And that's how a seemingly simple song can be dressed up to turn to something far more, let's say, harmonically and melodically rich. And that's why it's so good to study harmony in this way. How did I study harmony? Well, actually, as I've said before, I do have a degree in music theory, but it's actually classical music theory. I learned jazz on my own for the most part from records. I learned a lot of songs, and then I look up the songs nowadays with YouTube. It's so convenient. I look up a lot of early recordings of the songs that I like, of standards, and I try to figure out what the bass player, what the pianist, or the soloist is thinking. And I learned so much by doing this, and I encourage you to do that. And that combined with that thing I told you that's described in my book about exploring, like being able to visualize chords, combined with that, it's how I'm able to do what I just did here. Check out this song, Out of Nowhere, right? Probably the sheet music, I don't know. Might say B flat minor 7, E flat 7. But with this note, it works. But I think the original version was goes directly to the E flat, doesn't go to the B flat minor. The B flat minor is a bit of a modern touch that became more popular towards the second half of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and onward. And then it got notated this way. But it's good to know all these different possibilities. Then look, another song, Just Friends. Chord progression as Out of Nowhere, but now the melody is no longer this, it's this. But I think when I was investigating an early version of the recording, actually they did not use this chord. This is what it says on the lead sheet, but they used it like this. Diminished. Different harmonizations. And that I learned that harmony is not set in stone. There's a high degree of freedom. And it opened my ears and my mind's eye to a lot of melodic and harmonic possibilities, and these harmonic possibilities led to a lot of melodic possibilities. I think it's a lot of fun. Don't you think it's cool? There we go. Hours and hours of fun. I think this is how people like Martin Taylor, Joe Pass, who are so good at solo guitar, they've been experimenting with, maybe even subconsciously, with the contents of my book. They bought my book, you know. They probably bought my book, you know, even though I wasn't born when they started. I heard that Tico Rosenberg taught Django Reinhardt and Joe Pass. He said it. He said so himself. But Joe Pass, if you don't know who Tico Rosenberg is, it's best that you don't. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, they've been experimenting. They've been toying with the guitar organically in this way from a very, very early age, and that's how they're able to come up with these very intricate arrangements of chord solos of songs. And as I describe in the book, you never actually master it. You get better and better, but it's an endless ladder. You can always discover new things. You can take a simple song and you can twist it in so many different ways, come up with so many different harmonizations. I mean, that's what I just did here with White Christmas. By the way, today is actually Christmas Day. That's why I just played this. And it's also very cool, this thing about harmony, because that's how everyone will come up with their own individual styles. If you do this, I mean, you can go take lessons and everything. It's great. I recommend it. Find a teacher, find many teachers. But when you do this work on your own, you're going to start to gravitate towards certain sounds that attract you. And that's what's going to make your own style. When I study all these different soloists, I can hear and see all these different styles because they are exploring harmony on their own in this way. Like, just for example, Wes Montgomery, one thing that he's very fond of is that when there's a dominant chord, it doesn't matter what the context is. He might always treat it as this. Let's say if it's we're in the key of A, let's say in the key of A minor. You have E7. According to music school, this E7 should be E7 flat 9. And you have, you know, this scale, like the most natural scale. Okay? But Wes Montgomery might think this. Why so? Because he realized, okay, there's an E7. I play E7 and I just put this note here. Oh, we have B minor 6. But then Wes decided, hey, minor 7. Why don't I just treat it as a B minor 7 family? So if there's with the key of A minor, but there's an E7, Wes might be doing. Try. So that's something that Wes Montgomery was very, very fond of. And he discovered this probably on his own. You know, no one told him, oh, you're not supposed to do that. He did it. Django had things like that. Joe Pass has his things. Every great jazz musician has their thing. And actually, there's one thing, sorry to criticize music schools, but in a lot of music schools, people worship Miles Davis, rightfully so. But I don't think Miles Davis is a good person to study when you're starting out, because Miles Davis is someone who understands all the things that I'm talking about, but he rebelled against it. He didn't want to conform. So he took my concepts that I'm talking about here. I taught him, you know, back in the 30s. And just like Tico Rosenberg, right? Tico was everyone's teacher. But what was I going to say? Miles Davis decided to take what I'm teaching you here to the extreme. So I remember when I was a kid, people told me, oh, you got to listen to Miles Davis. You got to check out this recording. And I check it out. I didn't understand anything. I just didn't have the musical maturity to understand. Now I do. And there's so much of this going on. Miles Davis would be, check out a song like, what's this one? What's the name of the song? If I Were a Bell. If I Were a Bell, that he recorded in the 50s with his quintet. Miles Davis would be playing solo, thinking whatever he's thinking, and it may not be related to what the accompanists would be playing. I think it was Red Garland on piano, if I'm not mistaken. Red Garland would have his set of chords, and they would change every chorus. Paul Chambers, the bass player, same thing. Sometimes the bass and the piano don't match harmonically, but they resolve when they need to resolve, or they're listening to each other. I don't know what was going on, but it's a very fascinating recording. And if you had to make a chart of If I Were a Bell based on that recording, you would have to make multiple charts, one for every single chorus and for every single musician. What Miles is thinking every chorus, what Red Garland, what Paul Chambers is thinking, and you'll see like it might not always match, even though it's happening at the same time. This is taking harmonic direction to the extreme. So that's why I say like this obsession in academic circles over Miles Davis is a little bit misplaced in terms of education. If you're just starting out, that's not the place to start, in my opinion. But who am I to say how music should be taught, right? All right, guys. Happy New Year. See you next year. Like I said, I don't know if I can be making videos every week. It's very taxing. It's one of the reasons why I don't want to teach like online or anything. It's just like doing this, I really value my free time and to let myself rest. So if you guys support me, buy stuff on DC Music, go buy courses on SoundSlice, buy music on Bandcamp, whatever, that goes a long way. It allows me to afford help. Happy New Year!